In racing, there are formal proceedings to deal with objections, and they are more commonly called protests and inquiries. These proceedings are very similar to a mini court of law, so it's important that you are well prepared and present yourself confidently to increase your chances of achieving a fair outcome.
As we got there, the gaps were tightening.
Preparation is vital. You should already know the colours and names of the riders in each of your races, so you'll be able to accurately identify the riders and horses involved should any interference occur. When you are called into a protest or an inquiry hearing, which will happen frequently during your career, you should be quite clear about the facts of the incident, whether you were responsible for it or whether you were the recipient of the interference. Remember, the greatest help that you will get when dealing with a protest or an inquiry will be from your host trainer, jockey coach, or a senior jockey. Within the rules of racing, objections and protests are launched when it's thought that interference of any sort, whether that be accidental or intentional, has affected the horse's placing. Only horses who have won stake money plus one after can lodge a protest. So even if there was interference, you cannot protest if you had no chance of earning stake money. During your racing career, there will be times when you need to lodge a protest and other times you will have to defend a protest. In either case, once a protest is lodged, it must be resolved quickly because betting payouts on final placings cannot be made until the correct weight is declared. Usually, it's a rider that lodges the protest, but they can also be lodged by trainers and connections, and on rare occasions by stewards, as allowed by the rules of racing. By the time you have reached the scales to weigh back in, you should try to be clear in your mind about the facts of the interference, which horses and riders were involved, and the margins. On most tracks, riders and connections are allowed to view the official video filmed before deciding to protest. If you are unsure or in any doubt, you should ask to see the vision. This will help you and the trainers you are riding for determine if the horse that you are protesting against is the one that actually caused the interference and there was sufficient interference to justify your protest.
Hall's getting every ounce out of Taxagano.
For young and inexperienced riders, one of the most important things to remember is to take your time. Talk things over with your trainer before you decide whether or not to protest. Now let's see how a typical protest procedure works. Protests are made at the scales when the jockeys are weighing in, or after the race if they request to view the vision. General grounds of the protest must be clearly stated, specifying exactly where and by whom the alleged interference occurred and the margin. If you have a ride in the next race and haven't already, weigh out as quickly as possible and make yourself available to the stewards. Time is a crucial factor in racing and you must do all that you can to keep things moving. The riders involved report to the stewards room as soon as possible. An invitation to attend is extended to the trainers and respective owners of both horses. So, depending on their availability, they may also be present. When attending the stewards room, it's important to dress appropriately, as vision from this hearing could potentially be shown on TV or to other parties. The panel consists of the stewards that review the race in question. On most occasions, representatives of the press, including Sky Vision, are also allowed to attend as observers. But because time is of the essence, apart from the riders, only those trainers and owners that are immediately available are included. All protest hearings are recorded. When everyone is seated, the chairman of the stewards begins by identifying the parties and then addressing the rider that lodged the protest.
So Ms McNord and Mr. Miller, you have discussed the vision from the outside and understand you wish to lodge an objection, and Ms. McNord, is it your objection?
That's correct, sir.
The chairman then addresses the trainers of both horses, asking them to accept responsibility on behalf of the owners if they are not present. This ensures that all parties are represented as the laws of natural justice require. You must clearly and specifically as possible state what you believe affected you and caused you to miss beating the other horse. Be precise and don't use emotional language when stating your objections.
From about the 300 all the way through to the line, horses suffered some interference from the horse inside Taxagano.
Until you become experienced, this may be very daunting.
Basically, he's been laying off the fence. He's come off the fence about probably 6 to 7 horses, bumping my horse on several occasions.
Remember to take your time and listen carefully to everything that is said. Make sure that your evidence is relevant. The stewards are there to arrive at a fair and just decision. They will give you every opportunity to put your case forward. It may be helpful to take the racebook in with you to ensure that you get the colours and jockey names correct. The chairman will then ask if the other riders understand the objections and invites them to ask any questions.
Mr. Nucky, understand the objection, where it occurred, and what do you say?
Next, it's the turn of the jockey that has been protested against to make a statement.
My mouth did start to lay outwards. The interference to me felt minimal, felt to me like it was just a brush a couple of times.
Don't be flustered or rushed. Give yourself 2 or 3 seconds before you answer each question. This will allow you to gather your thoughts and speak with confidence.
I would say the amount of ground she looked like when she made ground around me, she was going to run away from my mount, and my mount dug in full hard and going towards the line. I was doing the best on the line.
Most importantly, don't lie and don't exaggerate about what happened. It is most important that young riders establish their credibility with the stewards from the very beginning of their career. False and misleading evidence is a breach of the rules.
The rider continues to use the whip in the left hand, even though the horse is already laying out, and yet I think that's cost me probably at least a head.
Remember to keep your evidence relevant. Remember, the incident has been observed by the stewards and captured on video, and you don't want to be embarrassed when the evidence is shown.
The official margin here between both runners is ahead, is the official margin from the judges.
The rider should state his or her version of the incident in a straightforward manner. The first jockey is granted the opportunity to counter that evidence, and both trainers, and sometimes the owners, may be invited to question either party or make a statement.
Clearly you can see on the video he started from about three horses off and finishes up about 7 off.
Once all the evidence has been presented, the footage of the incident is shown from whichever camera angles are appropriate and in slow motion if necessary. Where Hawkeye technology is available, you'll be able to see multiple views simultaneously. In the rare case that there is no video, then the stewards rely on their observations and on the evidence presented.
The 2 angles available there. Anyone want to see any more? Mr. Nucky, Mr. Kersley? No. Okay.
All riders have the opportunity to comment on the video evidence.
Nothing more to add, sir.
Trainers and owners will also have the opportunity to comment or ask questions.
All right, and Mr. Kersley, your comments?
I think key to this is that whilst acknowledging that Texarkana did drift out in the straight, I don't think there was actual interference as in bumping to the horse on his outside.
All right, thanks everyone. It's now left to the stewards to make a decision, so we'll ask you to wait outside and the stewards will bring you back shortly with our decision.
The parties will then retire from the stewards' room to await the decision. The stewards will consider all the evidence, what they have seen themselves, the riders' statements, and the video available.
The other horse had headed it on straightening.
They must decide if the interference did occur, and if it was caused by the horse protested against, and if the protesting horse would have finished ahead of that horse had the interference not occurred.
Texarkana's holding its line and finishing in a superior manner.
The evidence is discussed and voted on, and if necessary, the chair having a casting vote if there is a split decision. The parties are then called back into the stewards' room to hear the decision.
So the stewards have revisited the vision, also taking into account all the comments from the riders and trainers present, and we say, Ms McNaught, in our consideration, we can clearly see obviously that Texarkana did move outwards in the straight from about the 250 metres and make some contact with Prince Turbo. With yourself, we say not being disadvantaged to the extent of a margin greater than a head, and we also say that Texarkana was holding your mount on the line. So we feel for those reasons that it wouldn't be justified in upholding the objection, and we should leave the result as it stands. So therefore we are dismissing the objection and giving correct weight on the numbers sent forward by the judge.
The riders may then be told that they will be required to attend an inquiry later that day if they believe the level of interference warrants further investigation. A public announcement is made on course to inform the punters, the bookmakers and the TAB of the steward's decision, and correct weight is then declared. If upheld, the new numbers are announced and the correct weight is also declared.
Yeah, Darren's Martin Vickers from the Stewards. The ejection for this race has been heard and has been dismissed. Correct weight on numbers 1, 8, 2 and 5. Thank you.
As you can see, protest proceedings are conducted in an orderly and formal manner. For instance, remembering to address others by formal names to avoid confusion and ensure that everyone involved is fairly identified. Remember, because you are trying to either win the protest or defend your position, it is important to speak in a confident and positive manner and to be clear in your own mind about the facts. Take your time and don't be flustered of others that may be more experienced and confident than you. Don't raise your voice and remain calm at all times. Most protest hearings are over within 10 minutes. Even though the decision has been made, you need to be aware that if the stewards deem your protest to be frivolous, they can then penalise you. All runners can potentially suffer from interference during a race, so let's think about what happens when the horse that came last has suffered interference. In this case, a protest cannot be lodged because the horse had no chance of running a placing, therefore earning stake money. In cases like this, stewards will open an inquiry if required. Stewards investigate every incidence of interference, that is any incident that causes one or more horses to miss stride, tighten or check. This is regardless of whether a protest was lodged and regardless of which horses were involved. Inquiries are usually opened on the same day, however they may be adjourned if one of the parties has to leave the course due to injury or the interference is particularly serious and more evidence is needed. Proceedings will be adjourned for another day. Following the running of the race, the chairman of stewards obtains a report from the stewards observing the race on Hawkeye Vision and around the track based on their observations. The stewards inform the chairman of where the interference occurred, which horses were involved, and the outcome of the interference. The inquiry proceedings are in a similar manner to a protest hearing. The riders involved are given an opportunity to state their case, and then the stewards give their observations of those events.
Miss McNaught's have come up to my inside and made a bit of contact with my horse's hindquarters.
You did level up. Seems to be enough room for everybody.
Riders have an opportunity to question the stewards, and video evidence can also be examined.
I wasn't really sure. A bit of a sort of awkward sort of thing, but I was pretty well alright. I was actually stopping quite bad.
Remember, be prepared and don't be rushed. Think before you talk and state your case simply. Apprentices are always accompanied by a trainer, jockey coach, or a senior jockey to help them plead their case. If only attending to give evidence, the apprentice may present unaccompanied. However, they can request the support of a person if they wish.
Mr. Pike sort of come out a little bit from Jared, with both sides, so yeah.
Don't lie or exaggerate. Take each point that is made and try to build a case. For example, show that the evidence of another rider was not accurate and question the estimate of distances between horses. By doing this, you will construct the points of evidence in such a way that it may create a doubt in the steward's mind.
But just as I was going forward to cross, when my horse was in front, he probably eased in himself.
Your ability to think on your feet come with practice and with experience. At the end of the day, you must be satisfied that you have stated your case fully.
And I'll have a discussion with my students and see whether or not we feel somebody should answer to a charge of careless riding.
A charge, such as careless riding, may be laid as the result of evidence. If this is laid against you, you will be asked if you understand the charge. It is important that you understand what the stewards have alleged that you have done wrong. You will then be asked to make a plea if a charge is laid against you. You may plead not guilty, guilty, or no plea. If you plead guilty, you will be asked to address the stewards on penalty. If you plead not guilty or enter no plea, you will be asked to present a defence to the charge, which might include producing other evidence or witnesses. You will then be asked to leave the room while the stewards sum up all the evidence and reach a decision. If found guilty, you have the chance to address the stewards on penalty. You will need to emphasise on factors such as the degree of interference, your lack of experience, your good record, your income level, and your future rides, and anything else that will help the stewards arrive at the lightest possible penalty. Entering a plea of guilty may affect your case if legal proceedings are then taken against you. This is most likely to arise if a fellow rider has been seriously injured in the accident. You have the right to appeal against any penalty or disciplinary action taken by the stewards. The procedure for lodging an appeal differs from state to state. You should be advised of your rights to appeal. However, you may need to request this information from the stewards so you are not disadvantaged, especially when riding in another state. If you plead guilty, a rider can then only appeal against the penalty set. If the plea is not guilty, then the rider can appeal against the guilt and the penalty. Even if a decision goes against you, just remember when stewards do take action against interference, it's to protect the safety of horses and riders.